This episode of the Major Issues Podcast is brought to you by patreon.com/CBC Clubhouse. Comic Book Click is on Patreon, guys. For as little as 10 cents a day or $3 a month, not only can you help keep the lights on here at Comic Book Click headquarters, but your donation gives you access to exclusive content like CBC commentaries, polls where you can choose what content we cover next, and special behind-the-scenes footage of things here at Comic Book Click. Visit patreon.com/CBC Clubhouse today and become a Patreon. And remember, you, yes you, are worthy. Hello everybody out there in comic book land. My name is George Serrano, aka The Don, and if you're listening to this, you can only be here for one reason, and it's a brand new episode of the Major Issues Podcast, brought to you by comicbookclick.com, and as always, I am never alone. Sir, please introduce yourself.
I am actually stepping in for Dan the Comic Book Man. I'm a variant. I am Dan the Comic Book TV Man.
Oh, Dan the Comic Book TV Man. I do not know you too well. I do know your Sacred Timeline counterpart. He was a dear friend of mine. I don't know if he's at the Void now or not, but I'm glad that you are here, and so specific too that you're here because today me and Sacred Timeline Dan the Comic Book Man were set to cover the Disney Plus television show Loki. Have you seen it? Can we talk about it? Are you down to fill in?
Oh, there is definitely a Loki on my timeline, and it is a fantastic show. And I knew that Dan the Comic Book Man was doing other important things for his timeline, so I decided to step in because I just had to talk about the amazingness that is Loki by Marvel Studios.
Yeah, it's our third official MCU show after WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier. Everyone's picking out their favorites, but this one seemingly had the biggest mystery, while it was obvious what WandaVision was kind of based on. And we even reviewed some of the comics that Falcon and Winter Soldier would go on to, adapt. Loki was the big mystery. Loki was the big show where there was seemingly no source material for it. One of the other things was, I don't know if you remember this, but it was originally pitched as like Loki going through time and just like Loki at pivotal moments in time.
I remember
and affecting
that. It was,
and influencing.
it was like a time patrol thing.
Right.
Like we are cops of the timeline and we're going to make sure Genghis Khan doesn't actually become powerful and stuff. Like,
yeah, they made it seem
like pitching it like that.
Like he was going to be affecting major moments in history. I don't know if that was something that they abandoned. Maybe that's something that they'll go back more to in season 2. But this got really dense really quickly. What do you think?
Oh, this show was asking questions that I don't think most comic book properties have the groins to ask.
Yeah.
This show is basically telling you that everything you saw in the last 12 years of the MCU was predetermined.
Was that groin comment for the different sexualities out there? I felt like that was pretty inclusive. I like that.
In my timeline, there is no sexuality. We just
rub groins. You just rub groins together.
well, really, the only difference is some have the pointy nipples, some have the nipples with the holes.
That makes sense. It
caused a lot of race wars, but we're good now.
And yeah, like this show, I feel like caught a lot of people off guard. Some people loved this, some people hated it. Without any spoilers, what did you think of Loki?
I think this is the best written MCU content we have gotten since its inception. And I love a lot of the high concepts that MCU has given us, from Infinity War to Civil War, Endgame. Even the first Tony Stark was asking a lot of questions about the military industrial complex. But
yeah,
this show was literally telling you everything you do doesn't matter. It is all set up. You're going to eat cake this morning because some guy preserving the timeline makes sure you eat that cake. And if you decide to eat an apple, 2 cops are going to come and prune you and reset your world because you were supposed to eat cake that morning.
Right.
This show battles with the concept of free will, and how free is free will? Is free will only free if you don't know that predeterminism is a thing?
Right.
Like, there's so much mystery shrouded in our own existence. And this show had the balls to tell you that we don't even know what our existence is.
As someone who took on the task of trying to summarize and recap some of these episodes, I was constantly looking for what this show was about, what the themes of it were, because to me, like, I got it real early on with WandaVision, and then because of I assume my military background and my fandom for Cap, I was in the bag for that with Falcon Winter Soldier. This one took a bit longer, but we've discussed it in our super exclusive Major Issues group chat, where other fan of the show, Jonathan Escudero, mentioned that he believes that the line that bookends this series in the beginning and the end, "Who are you?" is the overarching theme of this series. What makes you you, and is it that free will, or is it the predetermined fate that you believe you are ascribed to from whoever started all the real TVA leader in the world? Where do you sit on that side of the debate?
I definitely think that this show is about who are you? Like who are you if there isn't a TVA controlling your mere reality? Who are you if your reality wasn't destined to be that way, ABC, over and over and over again? I like to look at a lot of different shows' concept of time as a guide to this, like Hill House specifically. Right. There was a line that said, "I used to think time was a straight line and events happen like dominoes, A to Z.
Right.
But really, time just falls around you like snow, like fresh rain." And The Good Place was very much a lot like that too, where time isn't linear. Time loops and curves and bends and scribbles, and it looks like Jeremy Bearimy.
Yeah.
But the way Mobius was telling Loki was that no, it's just A to B, but in a loop forever. Yeah. Because when he gave that line, this was the way it's supposed to happen over and over and over and over again, just bugged me out. Like, what do you mean? So you're telling me when this Loki dies, that there's going to be another Loki in another timeline that does the same exact, like every Loki in every timeline is supposed to have the sacred timeline's path.
And what's cool about it is that there might not be any character in the Marvel Cinematic Universe as tied to fate as Loki, right? Because he swears that at the end of his story, it ends with him on the throne as the God King. That's he's meant. That's his destiny, and that burden, as he's spoken on many occasions about, that burden of glorious purpose is what drives him, or what drove Loki to a certain point before he ended up kind of turning babyface throughout the MCU. So it was cool to pick a character that believes in fate this much, that believes in the end result, and whether or not the ends justify the means.
I mean, he was a literal prince that was kidnapped by another king and raised in that royalty. And it sucks because I look at it as like the Jon Snow effect, or like even any Knights of the Round Table type setting where a king has now two sons.
Yeah.
And now the youngest son has to wait till his older brother literally dies for him to actually be on that throne.
And if you think of the cold calculated nature of kingdoms, of military, of kingdoms, etc., conquest, in most cases, Loki would never get the throne, even if Thor died, right? You're not going to give the son of your enemy, even if you adopted him.
That's even the worst part about
keys
it.
To the kingdom.
That's even the worst part about it, is that he raised Loki to believe that one day, if he lived long enough, he too will command the armies of Asgard.
Yeah. I think that was
all be a lie.
That's to pacify him, right? That's to not let him, sharpen an axe in the corner while he's getting older and older.
His teeth just grow in dull. That's the problem. He just grows in dull teeth while everyone around him has razor sharp fangs.
Well, his ears are sharp. That's what the man says. For those who you want some background on this, Loki is a television series created by Michael Waldron for the streaming service Disney Plus, featuring the character of the same name. It's set in the MCU, or Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it shares continuity with those films in the franchise. It takes place after the events of Avengers Endgame, but strangely enough, after the events of Avengers in 2012, in which an alternate version of Loki created a new timeline when he took the Tesseract. Marvel produced the series, and Michael Waldron, is the head writer, with Kate Herron as the director of the first season. So Michael Waldron started off as an intern for Rick and Morty, and then Dan Harmon brought him in to do production for Community season 5. After that, he produced a bunch of Rick and Morty episodes, but he has one writing credit for Rick and Morty, and that is Old Man and the Seat.
Oh
Which was
my
one
God.
of your favorite episodes of one of the remaining seasons.
It's in fact the only episode of season 4 that I like, because even Morty with the Dragon, the only thing I liked about that was Matthew Broderick as the cat. But the actual literal entire episode, Old Man in the Seat, I feel like that is Dan Harmon giving us just a little bit of, I can still write like season 1.
Yeah. But now it turns out that it's Waldron who wrote it. So
there you go. So my favorite episode of season 4 is written by my favorite show from this Disney series. But I started thinking too about the fact that this is a Loki of the timeline where they had to go to New York because 3 Infinity Stones were in New York. Mm-hmm. So then that means everybody in that, after that event of Loki leaving New York, is all been pruned.
Most likely. Yeah, because the Space Stone doesn't transform him out of time. It just transformed him somewhere else. So I'm assuming when they put the reset charges
to another country, basically.
Yeah. I'm assuming when they put the reset charges in that country, it's like worldwide charges, right? Surely it can't just be.
It's not. It's not just to that area. It's literally a timeline reset. So that means the ancient one, and Hulk talking, and everybody doing the whole little Tony resetting his heart.
Yeah,
that's all been pruned. All those people are now pruned, and the only person to survive that entire timeline was Loki.
It kind of makes you wonder why, like, the ancient one didn't know about the TVA or Odin, but I guess they're all mere puppets they're all mere puppets still on the same timeline.
Her thing is time, not like outer worldly time, especially since time was different in so many places.
Yeah, if you guys want like a bunch of like, if you saw Loki and you want to dive in a little bit more, I suggest rewatching Doctor Strange. There's a lot of time talk in Doctor Strange, especially with Caecilius, who believes time to be the enemy. So we're gonna find out.
And it's crazy because if you really think of it, it is kind of the enemy.
If you can stop it, I guess you live forever. So I could see.
But what's stop her? Yeah, but what's stop? See, time is a man-made concept.
But you age.
What is the concept of
age,
time?
So surely something is passing. There is an age. Whether the time is the clock that we created, something is moving.
Yeah, but think of the species that we've seen in comic books that literally age eons.
Yeah.
And then they finally get the wrinkles.
Yeah, they would have, I guess, a different calendar or a different birthday at the very least.
If that's the case, then it's not really time that's passing; it's aging that's passing. Because if you could live to 500, and by the time you hit up 275, you're finally getting gray hairs and wrinkles. Time didn't pass you. Your age is finally starting to show.
Your age rose. Time passed you in the sense that time is a word we made up to define whatever that means, right? Whatever it
is that
whatever
you go from black hair to gray hair,
or when the sun goes up and goes down, like things are moving and breaking down and being born, and we're trying to create a catch-all term that means all of that at once. Speaking of creating, this guy is also writer for Heels, that new Stephen Amell wrestling show that's going to be on Stars. Yep. And he wrote Multiverse of Madness. So, if anything, I know
he's the screenwriter. He's the playwright for fucking it. Oh my God.
And then, Sam Raimi is set to direct that, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, Sam Raimi's going to direct the movie he didn't write. This is going to be
big. As far as the director, Kate Herron's favorite comic book characters were Loki and the X-Men. She was pleased to get the opportunity to work on the project, because it's her favorite character. She has a few short films under her belt, and she's directed some Netflix shows, but Loki is like far and away her biggest credit to date, which Ain't no problem with that. The only thing that broke my heart, I think she's about 33. So she's like roughly my age, and she directed the first season of Loki. And I'm just like,
listen, Paige was my age when she won the women's championship for the first time on Raw.
yeah.
Remember that whole like that big mystery win? Yeah, when she won that, we were literally the same age.
Time makes fool of us all. Daniel, the comic book TV man, it makes
Time
fools
makes fool of us all.
Let's get into this spoiler filled. My notes are a bit scatterbrained in the sense that I chose to kind of tackle characters before I tackle the plots.
Well, I don't think we should really so much tackle like episode plots. I don't really think we need to go that far because I feel like there's a lot of things that happen that people should see. Yeah. And as spoiler as we go, you need to see how you get there. Like there was a show called Columbo that literally showed you the bad guy of the show in the first opening 5 minutes. And then the rest of the show is following the police of how they get to that moment. So you always know who the villain is. You just got to see how they get there. So there's a lot of things I want to see how you people react with getting there. Because this show is really high concept, but not just time, not just free will and who you are, but there's a lot of love in this show. There's an
identity, right? There's a big identity conversation about what makes you you, and you know, if there were different versions of you, you know, would they all have the same bad habits? Would they all have the same nature? Does that mean that that's your nature? If you find 5 variants of you and they all have the same bad habit, right? Is that in your nature then to have that bad habit?
You know, because if reality is infinite, then that means there's another 5 that don't have that bad habit. But then there's another 20 that do, but then another 30 that don't, and another 100 that do, and another 1,000 that don't.
Right.
Reality is infinite. There are infinite versions of yourself in infinite worlds. Look at your circulatory system and how veins sprout out of veins that all pump blood.
All going to the main part. Imagine if they took out all your veins but one and called it the sacred vein. Wouldn't that be weird?
You would die because there's not enough.
It's a bad plan. It's a bad plan for those who are figuring it out. Let's talk about the star, Tom Hiddleston. Were you happy to see my man back as Loki?
He is honestly, and I guess by default, but I personally think he's the greatest villain the MCU ever created.
Yeah, I can see that being a narrative. I can totally see that being a thing. Yeah.
Domination is alive. Abomination is alive. Zemo's alive,
but he's far and away been the most showcased villain. Like without a doubt, there's not even a question about it.
Without question, he's the most showcased villain in the MCU. It's like he's their only villain, and everyone else is just henchmen. Even Thanos got snapped to dust with no problem.
Yeah, it was cool.
And Loki finds a way to survive a second time that he loses.
He was a hell of a supporting character in the he was the main villain in the first Avengers, a hell of a supporting character in the Thor series. It was really cool to see him get the center stage and get to like play around and be all the things that we know Loki to be, whether it's a charming or backstabbing or, you know, emotional or any of those things. So I loved it. I loved Tom getting back into the saddle, and he put it on like an old coat. Like it doesn't feel like there's any time missing. Like it doesn't feel like he got ring rust. And I mean, these movies are only happening every other year, so I guess maybe he just stays in Loki mode.
I mean, yeah, Infinity War was 2018, so this was only been 3 years for him, so it's not really that long of a. And imagine that he does a lot of like touring and press conferences, or he goes to the store to get a bagel and someone runs into him and asks him to say Neo to him. Yeah. So, you know, like,
pretty sure a lot of girls are asking Tom Hiddleston to say Neo when he shows up at the con.
Probably. But also it's beautiful because what it is it's Tom Hiddleston playing Loki, but this is now Tom Hiddleston. It's essentially, in a weird way, a singularly character reboot played by the same actor. This is a reboot character. They literally everything that we followed in the 10 years of Marvel, Loki died.
Yeah, let's explain that to those who don't understand what's going on. So this Loki that we're talking about in this series is the one from the alternate timeline created when the Avengers used that time heist to steal the Infinity Stones from 2012 so they could reverse the snap. that all took place in Endgame. So this Loki was able to steal the Tesseract after the Avengers failed to secure it. And in doing so, he kind of sort of alerts the Time Variance Authority, who we first meet in this show, who apprehend him and take him back to their headquarters. But like you were saying,
the Loki that we have that we saw die in Infinity War on the sacred timeline, there is no Loki.
Right.
Before the events of season 1, as it stood on the sacred timeline, there is no Loki.
Right.
Now there's a Loki who is outside of all time.
Yeah.
In the Time Variant Authority.
Yep, locked up. But like you were saying, it's important to note that this Loki hasn't experienced Thor: The Dark World, so he didn't get locked up. He didn't see his mother die. He didn't fake his own death. He didn't impersonate his father and take the throne of Asgard.
He didn't have that conversation with his brother on Ragnarok saying, yep. I am like, because if you were here, I'll give you a hug. I am here. I'm not an illusion. I actually am here. Like
it didn't meet Hela.
So he doesn't even know he has a sister.
Didn't experience the end of Asgard as we know it. And because he didn't experience Infinity War, he didn't get the confrontation with Thanos and his death. He didn't experience those things. I'm not to say he didn't know about those things. We'll get to that in a bit.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Once in the TVA custody, he's processed and brought before the judge to stand trial for his crimes against the timeline. And it turns out his powers don't work while he's there. That's a kind of funny scene where he's like trying to get his daggers or guess or something or do something.
He's trying to get his daggers. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what he keeps doing it. And the judge's like, what is he doing? And the hunter
the chick laughs.
She goes, yeah, he's trying to use his magic. like we've seen this happen a million times. He's trying to use his magic.
I'm not gonna lie. I don't know who had their own personal experience with the criminal justice system and going through those kinds of processing, but that stuff was a little bit too realistic for me to like not get like cold shivers. Like when he was going through each stage of like the psychological evaluation, the x-ray machine and having to sign off that this is what his statement and stuff like that. I'm like, oh my God, who actually went to bookings? Because that was a bit real.
That's just good old bureaucracy, I guess, for you. Just lines and paperwork and processing.
That shit it's actually what they really do in real life. They have a person there that gives you this psychological evaluation and says, have you now ever tried to hurt yourself or harm yourself? There's a giant body x-ray that you have to walk through barefoot, no shirt, like
to see if you're a robot. Is that what that's for?
That's so crazy. How would you even know that you're not a robot? Like, I don't see myself knowing that I'm a robot.
I love how he's like, do many people not know whether they're a robot or not?
Which is also more that was the first inkling of Rick and Morty writing that I got. Yeah. Because I'm like, oh my God, this is like a clone Beth type thing. Like, well, what if this Loki on this timeline is a clone? Like, we don't know.
Another thing that you were saying about, bookings and the TVA, you would have to assume that just like bookings, this judge has seen and heard everything under the sun. Right. So nothing's going to impress her.
A time judge,
right?
That is literally seen like an infinite amount of variants have to explain their story. What? I wanted coffee this morning. I really didn't want to drink a cup of water. Well, nope, you were supposed to drink water. So you're now being pruned.
Yep. And so there's no excuses. She has no patience for any of it. So he's eventually
he keeps calling them Lokis. Like Lokis. It's a Loki. It's a Loki. Like if it's a verb.
Yeah. He's eventually found guilty and he's sentenced to be reset before a certain TVA employee that we'll get into named Mobius, who was sitting in on the procession, pleads with Judge Renslayer to give him custody of the Loki variant.
I'm sorry, that is such a cliche, but it was one that I didn't even really. It didn't cross my mind until I realized, oh my God, how many times have they done that? Where somebody who is a menace to society is standing before a judge for like the millionth time. And the judge is like, you know what? I can't give you any more chances. It's time to send you away to jail. And someone in the fucking crowd is like, actually, I'll take them under my custody.
Yeah.
And watch over them. And I'll make sure that they're okay. And then the climax of the film has to happen. So the person has to revert back to the old ways from the beginning of the movie and hurt the only person that was actually there for them. And then they have to do the whole change of heart thing. It's following it's going into the hero's circle.
100%. And with this, seemingly we can't really understand why somebody like Mobius would try to enlist somebody like Loki because according to Judge Renslayer, he's dead to rights. Like he just did wrong. Like he messed up the timeline. So we see that Mobius like brings him to the side, probes him with questions to determine whether or not he's useful and stuff. And he shows him. Go ahead.
So can we say that now that I'm thinking about it, can we say Loki did wrong? Because let's replay the events of what happened.
Well, I don't know about wrong, but he made a diverging timeline.
But can I? But I want to argue that he didn't know that he was going to do that, and here's why.
But I want to argue that it doesn't matter whether or not you know, because if you watch the orientation video from Miss Minutes, which we'll get into, it doesn't matter if you know. You could have clocked in late for work, and they show you in the video. You could have clocked in late for work. You could have eaten an apple instead of a banana. It's not malicious whether or not you did it.
Yeah, but Loki literally picked up the Tesseract. Did he know that the Tesseract would have transported him if he held it in his own two hands?
No, but that's what I'm trying to tell you, that it doesn't matter whether or not you know. It doesn't matter whether or not you did it intentionally to the timeline, which makes the TVA kind of evil. Not evil, but kind of black and white in that sense, which is the same thing with Sylvie. Sylvie's existence, seemingly, which we'll get into, was the problem. Like there was no talking about it. There was no figuring it out. She didn't choose to exist.
That's what the variant was. Is Loki was Loki Laufeyson was happened to be born Loki Laufeyson daughter. I literally have for a month now, for a month and a half, I've been thinking, what was Sylvie's variant timeline? The fact that she wasn't born a boy.
Yeah.
The fact that she is the only Loki that was in existence that was born a girl.
Part of me theorizes, and again, I've put on a lot of tinfoil hats when watching this show, but part of me theorizes that maybe it is the fact that she would eventually go on to do what she did with He Who Remains. That may be that, like, she was always slated to do that, and thus Kang always wanted her out of the picture.
The reason why I can't agree with you on that is because He Who Remains didn't know what was going to happen. Once the branch hit the nexus point, then he's like, okay, whatever happens, happens. So he didn't know Sylvie was going to kill him.
So my tinfoil hat thing is that he always knew. He always gives this.
So then there was no nexus
and it always happens. No, so this is this is me, and I'm complete. I could be completely.
That's the whole point of this show. That's why this show is amazing.
I want to blame it on somebody else. If I had a choice, I'd blame it on Wanda. But I think that something else that we either have seen or haven't seen happened at that time where the rumbling takes place with He Who Remains, and thus he realizes that it doesn't really matter what's going to happen next.
So then you're saying that the nexus point wasn't those two being at the Citadel for so long.
Nope.
You're saying something else happened, and he's like, wait a minute, something just crossed the nexus. Like he noticed something outside of those three cross the nexus.
One door in his house wasn't unlocked, and he thought he was safe, and he heard the door open. He was like, "Son of a, you know what? It is what it is."
So I'm gonna piggyback on that. Then it could be a Wanda thing, because there's no. I don't.
She had the Nexus commercial. You remember that? She had a commercial for Nexus in her.
She did have but that's also freaking Kevin Feige in the MCU being able to literally do Easter eggs from before to like the way they do breadcrumbs.
Yeah, maybe it was her looking through the Darkhold. You know, it could be any of those things.
Maybe she wasn't supposed to steal the Darkhold. She brought her kids back. She wasn't supposed to bring. So
something's up.
Something that is a catalyst for the multiverse of madness falls simultaneously as those two are at the Citadel of at the end of time. Because since they're at the end of time and time doesn't exist, time's still going to happen where they're from.
Yeah. So
it is very MCU to do that. It is very, very MCU to do something that happens while something else is happening, and you'll see it. You'll go back and see it later.
Yeah, and again, I could be completely wrong, but that's my headcanon moving forward. Is that he was having this conversation that he seemingly planned out in his mind a million times, and then a unicorn showed up, and he was like, "What? Well, you know what?"
I mean, it could be that. I mean, because if he knew that, he would actually know that him and those two talking where they were talking long enough would cause a Nexus event. So he wasn't surprised that they caused the Nexus event.
Mhm.
He was just surprised that a Nexus event was caused.
He welcomed them in, and Miss Minutes says that he was impressed. So seemingly he didn't mean to kill them or do any of those things. But they were still a threat to him somehow, as one shows a serious threat, a fatal threat to him.
Yeah, but
so
he was being so nonchalant about them being there for so long that the snap of, oh snap, a Nexus event surprised him in a way that I don't think it would have if they were there for too long.
And in the same sense, no, like you said, in the same sense, it was like he got distracted. Like he was playing a game over here, and he was the master of that game with the Loki sitting at the desk. And then something happened over here. He was like, oh. And like he says, like all of a sudden, I don't know what's going on.
What really drives it home is the fact that because everything is predetermined for him and he knows how everything is going to go, his words are rehearsed like a script.
Yeah. Like as you see when the TVA, when the TVA prints out every word you've ever said.
Yep. So his thing is rehearsed like a script. But so for him to be like, well, this happened like 5, 6, 7, 10 seconds ago. Like you can tell that he didn't know what he had to say. Like it was
but he knows that his efforts, which we'll get into, of stopping multiversal war are gone. And it doesn't even matter what happens next because something has already started. Some rumblings have already started.
I want to ask you real quick. When he said, "I'll see you soon," and all the resurrection talk, do you think consciously that brain is going to be in another He Who Remains, or is it going to be
no. I don't think there will be a version of He Who Remains that remembers the events of what just happened.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Like once
I don't think
so. That's it. He dies, but they will be another version of him that does the same exact thing with his own new memories, his own new conscious.
Yeah, just like these two Lokis, basically. The Loki from our original sacred timeline and the Loki from the show.
Because he doesn't know about the future events. It's his own conscious being in the shell. Yes.
Yeah, and one fandom also theorizes that there will be a third or even fourth variant of this that will see all of it and choose to be a babyface and choose to be a hero, and join the Young Avengers because that's one of his arcs in the comics as well.
But this is a babyface Kang. Oh yeah, we're in
spoiler talk. I guess. This is a baby. No, we've been in spoiler talk ever since we started talking about the TVA and stuff like that.
Remains. I forgot we were in spoiler talk.
We're already in spoiler talk.
Yeah, no, this is a babyface Kang.
It's because it's going to be a babyface Kang that becomes more babyface once we.
The reason why I say that this is a babyface Kang is because only someone that is actually truly good can look within themselves and call out their flaws. He didn't say, "You two are villains, you two are evil." He said, "No, we're all bad guys here."
But it's one of those things that's like, once you remove free will from a population as a terms to control them because you don't think that they're in a position to control themselves, that seems villainy. That seems villainous. Sorry.
But do the ends justify the means? If
I don't know, that's a scary question to ask. Because if I say everyone in New York needs to stay in their houses after 8 p.m. because no one knows how to act, and everyone is forced to by gunpoint by the police, and crime rates go down, do the ends justify the means?
Yes.
Would you enjoy those means to get to that end?
You wouldn't enjoy it, but if it meant that 5 less women were raped, if 3 less children were killed, if 2 less people were robbed because cops were literally patrolling your house at gunpoint to make sure you stay inside, maybe we do need less crime. Like until people start learning better. Those
are dangerous ideas. And what's funny is, to get back to the Mobius questioning him thing, this actually fits exactly there because he axes Loki about ruling Midgard and ruling space and why he should. And he says basically that people don't need choice. When given choice,
he said freedom is what is it? Freedom is a curse, or freedom is dangerous, or something like that.
Yeah, because up to him, he will subjugate everyone so long and then say that, because I took over and because I removed free will from you guys, I've made sure that you couldn't destroy each other. So it is a dangerous conversation. I believe in free will, but I get it. I understand it. When they spoke about this, right? They spoke about the chaos, like the Lokis represent that chaos, that dangerousness. And at various points, they're trying to snuff it out. Loki himself tries to escape from the TVA and kind of realizes that they're in a league above their own in power, and decides he's just going to end up working with Mobius to figure out what the hell is going on with this whole thing.
Him opening the drawer and seeing Infinity Stones being used as paperweights.
Yeah, that was big.
Was beautiful.
That was big.
He literally looks at it, like, is this actually the greatest power in the universe? It's like, oh my God. At that point, that's when you're like, yo, is he about to become like a time cop? Are you going to see Loki
time
and
cop?
Bro, I thought Loki was going to become a time cop in that moment. I'm like, yo, are you going to throw him in an actual like SWAT team uniform and make sure that like Hitler actually stays Hitler, so there's no variant branch it? Which, damn, that's actually
no. Like I actually thought that they was going to go down that route of like historical. You know, he was going to do like. But it's
still kind of villainous stuff. If you think of it. Like all the atrocities of humanity had to happen on the sacred timeline.
Yeah.
To prevent the worst atrocity of reality, and it's like.
Even something like the Avengers doing what they did, which would seemingly on paper break all of it, was meant to happen.
But remember, a lot of us, well, not a lot of us in the group chat, we were all saying, I was like, wait a minute. If Loki did what he did, the Avengers had to do what they did for Loki to do him. And then it's explained, oh no, what the Avengers were supposed to do actually is predetermined. The Avengers were supposed to branch a timeline so that you weren't supposed to grab the Tesseract. But then it gets into the conversation of, wait a minute, if you knew the Avengers was supposed to go to another time and steal the time stones, you can't tell me that they didn't know that Loki would have grabbed the Tesseract.
Again, it doesn't really matter whether they know, they'll just get rid of him. Like, even if they knew it was predetermined and he was predetermined to start the next event, they allow that to happen and just cut off, they prune it, right? So they don't cut the tree. They don't cut the tree that the Avengers planted. They just cut the branch of Loki.
But it's weird that if you knew that the Avengers was supposed to go back to 2012, then that means you knew that Tony Stark was supposed to tell Hulk, you got to take the stairs, because that happened already in the sacred timeline.
No, I don't know if it happened in the sacred timeline.
How wouldn't it have happened in the sacred timeline for that? For that to be,
because didn't they go to an alternate timeline? Because you can't go backwards and go forward. Wasn't that the whole issue? You can't go backwards and then go forward because you're going backwards to another point.
Oh no,
thus creating a new branch.
No, that's right. So what happened? Now I remember because it was explained. Because it's
not Back to the Future is what they said.
Well, I rewatched Endgame a couple of months ago, about like 3 months ago, and for some reason it hit me that I actually understood what Bruce Banner was saying. Going back in time automatically makes a new branch because you weren't supposed to exist a second time in the past. You're not changing the past and altering the future. You're changing the past to make a new future.
Yes.
So the fact that the Avengers went back in time creates a branch. But if that's the case,
what do you mean?
Here, the Avengers went. This is the sacred timeline. The Avengers went back in time and to make a new branch. Once they made that new branch would have ceased to exist once they took all the Infinity Stones. But they would have went back and it would have just replaced the Infinity Stones. The fact that Loki made a new own little branch within the branch means they had to prune both.
Loki's story and the Avengers story goes like this, so you can get rid of this part. The Avengers will still do what they do.
See, that's the problem. So then that branch that the Avengers made by going back in time and stealing the Infinity Stones, if the third branch was pruned, then on that second branch, it's a reset. Loki never grabs the Tesseract.
Seemingly. And the thing is, they had to go back again to go get the Tesseract from 1940, whatever. So again, I'm not the authority of time, but we do have a Time Variance Authority that we should talk about. It's first time us meeting these people, a bureaucratic organization that is tasked with preserving the sacred timeline and preventing the creation of branching timelines. We learn, or I should say we are told from an orientation video that Loki has shown that long ago, a vast multiversal war threatened all of existence. The timekeepers, to stop the different universes from fighting for supremacy, reorganized the multiverse into a single manageable timeline called the sacred timeline that the TVA polices. All persons who step off the path that the timekeepers created, whether on purpose or by accident, threaten to create another multiverse, and with it, a multiversal war. So these variants to the timeline are erased by the TVA while the timeline is reset.
That's also kind of funny, though, because the way Miss Minutes explains it to Loki in the first episode is a long, long time ago. Mm-hmm. But then when Kang explains it at the Citadel, he's like a Kang from the 31st century. That's the future.
Right, but they had to give the TVA a story, right? That story is better than the other story. That the three space gods, they actually say in the orientation video.
That means the multiversal war happens in the future from us right now in the sacred timeline.
Not technically. He was a scientist from a 31st century, but he could have found variants from different timelines.
But the fact that the fact that a scientist from like the year 3000 figured out a multiversal war,
figured out the multiverse.
He figures out the multiverse in the future from us. We are Tony and Cap. 1,000 years in the future, a Kang figures out that that Saturn is, or like our galaxy is sitting on top 3 different galaxies. So then to stop a multiversal war, would he have to have reset all of time to make one timeline?
Somehow, some way, they show that
everything would have
that
to
those guys had those sticks. They had the TVA batons. Him and his variants. I don't understand why. I don't understand how, but they were equipped with that time technology. I'm assuming the 31st century scientists created some time weapons.
We all know the prune goes to one specific reality outside of time that Alioth eats.
The void. Yeah, because you can't destroy matter. Because you can't destroy matter. But yeah, seemingly, when He Who Remains was born, there was a multiverse. We've not experienced any of that right now. There was a multiverse when he was born. Everything on the sacred timeline that has happened so far happens after the creation of the TVA. So That's starts craziness. The timeline, if that makes any sense. He starts the MCU.
He restarts everything. It's like, I'm just going to start this over from the beginning. The dinosaurs are meant to be. The dinosaurs are meant to die. Cavemen are meant to do this.
Which you could argue is a commentary on the Marvel Cinematic Universe as you know it. We knew Spider-Man. We knew Captain Americas. We knew Punishers. But we started brand new with the MCU, as if none of them ever existed.
And that became our sacred timeline for Marvel Comics. Like Marvel comic book adaptations, the sacred timeline is
the MCU.
That's very egotistical, Kang.
Well, it's on purpose, because now that it's broken, we can now allow all the other Marvel variants that we saw, Ben Affleck's Daredevil, or, I guess there's more out there, but that's
what comes to mind. If they put Ben Affleck back in that Daredevil costume, I swear to God, if Ben Affleck gets casted as Daredevil again.
What did you think about the TVA aesthetics?
It was very Stanley Kubrick.
Yeah,
it was very 2001 Space Odyssey. It was very much 1970s sci-fi.
Yeah,
it was like that monochromatic, washed out colored. There was a lot of like knobs and dials and buttons going.
A lot of analog equipment.
That's it. Yeah, it was very analog-y. It was very like, you look at these, and what's crazy is like you look at like the time pads that they have on them, and you're like, this is something you would see in Star Trek with freaking William Shatner.
Kind of looks like a DS a little bit. It's like a Nintendo DS.
It looked like a holographic sidekick to me.
Yeah.
It looked like a holographic sidekick. You slide up and it's like, what?
Turns out the director based the TVA on her own experience serving as a temp worker, while Michael Waldron felt there was a touch of irony and humor in making the TVA a soulless but bureaucratic kind of office, and the sets were purposely designed to look like a stereotypical government office from the 1970s and 1960s, like you were saying.
Am I not the man?
Down to the typewriters, rotary phones,
but I'm definitely the man,
etc. Let's get into some of these TVA employees. The first one we got to talk about is Miss Minutes, the animated anthropomorphic clock mascot for the TVA, voiced by Tara Strong.
You gotta give her credit. She
had a voice acting for the comic book community.
She's done it, and not just even comic. She's Bubbles. You know that, right?
Yeah.
She's the original
Bubbles.
Bubbles
She's
from
Raven.
Powerpuff
She's
Girls.
Starfire. She's Harley Quinn. She does a lot. And Miss Minutes in here also does a lot. It turns out that the writers really just wanted her to introduce the TVA, but they found more ways to include her in the series because they found her to be a fun character. And her design was inspired by Felix the Cat and other cartoons from that kind of information.
I'll give it
Era. Sorry.
I'll definitely give it that credit because someone that watches reaction videos, there is that first episode, there was so many people that was loving the Miss Minutes bit.
Yeah.
So many people were loving that little Miss Minutes exposition in the first episode.
Yeah, it reminded me of those weird kind of like cartoons that I used to watch back in the day when Cartoon Network
and
would
she had
get
this
really late
cute
at night.
Southern accent for no reason. Like,
That's said to be because
Miss Minutes.
Waldron has a Southern accent. They think that's why they
really
gave it to her. But yeah, like I'm wondering.
Sarah Strong did it perfectly.
I'm wondering if we get more about her in season 2. Like, what is she? Is she literally like just a like Alexa for He Who Remains?
That's what she be. She might just be in a semi-conscious Alexa.
But then, like, now that homie's gone, where does she go? Does she go for revenge? Like, what is she? What's her stake in this now that things are the way that they are?
Yeah, actually, because there was only one timeline Kang, apparent, like, supposedly, because he was stopping the multiverse from happening. That means the MCU, as we knew it, had a Kang chilling at the end of time, just conquering everything.
Yeah.
So maybe she just goes to maybe she floats around and finds a Kang she likes.
That'd be funny. We gotta talk about
just go full Vicky from iRobot and just try and kill everybody.
That could be it. Yeah, you killed her hubby. She's done with it. Gugu Mbatha-Raw plays Judge Ravonna Renslayer, a former TVA hunter who rose from the ranks to become a respected judge. She oversees the Loki variant investigation, and the director, Kate Herron, compared both her and Renslayer, both the actress and Renslayer, to chameleons, saying that Renslayer was always trying to dance the line with Mobius of being both his superior and his friend. This character had made a lot of people raise their eyebrows because Renslayer is very much tied to Kang in the comics. There was a lot of allusions that Kang might be in this series, but they try to keep things close to the chest. So people were always kind of looking at Renslayer. Once you
look it up and you find out that that's Kang's comic book girlfriend.
Yeah.
You're like, oh shit, where are we going with this now? And Jonathan Majors was already casted for Ant-Man Quantum Mania, so.
What did you think of Renslayer?
I thought she wasn't gonna get that much of a role.
Yeah.
Not gonna lie. Like the first 2 episodes, I'm like, she's probably not gonna get that big of a thing. Then she goes and prunes Loki.
She has a pretty good she has a pretty good I'm keeping it all together face.
But she also has, I look at it different. I look at every single facial expression is like conflictedness. Like before she prunes before she prunes Mobius, you see like she has the sourpuss mad face, but her eyes is like, oh my God, am I really going to do this face?
Because she is under the assumption, just like the TVA, that it's all for the ends justify the means. Even though these are terrible means. These are terrible means. She's seemingly killing, a friend of hers, and then and in various cases pruning people, pruning timelines, at one point being tasked to take care of a child and prune her. I think that given her the red on her ledger to steal something from another film, I think that she understands that she's done a lot for the idea that the TVA is real. And once people start poking holes in that, she has to maintain that truth. She has to, or else everything that she's done up until that point was for nothing. And if that's the case, then she becomes a villain.
She said everything is going to be for. I can't make everything be for nothing. This can't be all for nothing.
So yeah, she's great. I think she's great. We have Wunmi Masaku, who plays Hunter B-15, a high-ranking hunter of the TVA determined to stop the variant that has been killing Minutemen troops. What's interesting is that Hunter B-15 was originally written to be a male character, but it changed after Musaku's audition. And she pointed out that the character's gender didn't really alter any of the essence of the character, and it's kind of true. So yeah, that big defection.
Oh, that's 100% true because it could have been any kind of human being doing that role. As long as you could cry in that moment where you got brought back to Alabama with Sylvie, that moment where she's like, I looked happy. What do I do now? It didn't matter what your gender was, what your race was, what your color was. You could be green, blue, purple, man, wife, woman, but I don't give a shit. As long as you could literally make that moment heartfelt.
Yeah.
And she made that moment feel like, damn, everything I'm doing is for nothing. So it's like, it doesn't matter who you are, as long as you can translate that moment.
We also have Hunter T20, played by Sasha Lane, a TVA hunter who's kidnapped and enchanted to reveal the location of the timekeepers. She's eventually terminated, and we'll get into that. But I think the star of the TVA has to be Mobius and Mobius, played by Owen Wilson, an agent of the TVA who specializes in the investigations of particularly dangerous time criminals. Herron likened Mobius to a hard-boiled detective, with Wilson comparing him to the character Jack Cates in 48 Hours. Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige noted that the character is similar to Wilson in the fact that he's unfazed by the MCU. Hiddleston helped Wilson prepare for the role by explaining and showing him moments from the MCU films, which Wilson felt was useful for when Mobius interviews Loki in the series. Wilson and Herron examined Good Will Hunting 1997 as inspirations for Mobius, being a mentor and therapist for Loki, who still pushes him. Do you think like Good Will Hunting and all that kind of stuff did it feel like the inspiration for this stuff?
Oh, very, very much so, because a lot of Good Will Hunting after Robin Williams was introduced was calling Will out on all of his bullcrap. Just saying, like, I had a realization last night. You're just a scared little kid. You don't know about the world. Like, and that's very much so Mobius in his position of the first episode. Like, if you look at Mobius in the first episode, he is a man that's seen everything.
Yeah.
He's a man that has seen it all. He's pruned his fair share of Lokis. He's dealing with this one Loki that just won't go. So he's very much seeing this Loki as, I know you. You're just a scared little kid. You're just a this, you're this, that, and very much calling him out on his own flaws.
I think it's funny that one of the things that made him good for this role is apparently Mobius, or Owen Wilson, the actor, isn't really big on the MCU in general. So he actually didn't know about the events of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Like I said earlier, he had Tom Hiddleston tell him what happened, which is very reminiscent of what happens in the first episode, where they both watch the series of events in Loki's life, which I thought was pretty interesting. The last person I have for TVA employee is Casey, played by Eugene Cordero of The Good Place fame, my boy Pillboy.
Yeah, Pillboy.
I just want to bring Pillboy up. He works for TVA collecting and filing evidence. One of the cool parts about the TVA is that it introduces a whole bunch of tech. So we see the TVA batons that are capable of altering a target's flow of time, like when Loki got hit with it and they changed it to 1/16th speed so he can feel it longer. But you can actually disintegrate a target, whether organic or inorganic, in order to quote unquote prune it. But we end up finding out that these things aren't erased. It sends it to this this place called the Void, basically, where everything that the TVA prunes goes, because you can't out and out destroy matter. We find out about the TempPad, a device used by the TVA to control the time doors and time cells. It also can identify variants, see and project files, and monitor the timeline. The TVA uses... We also have reset charges. The TVA uses those reset charges to prune.
Yeah, I don't understand the difference between the resetting and the pruning, honestly.
So I think reset charges are for the entirety of where you're at, and the pruning is where you aim the stick. So it's like almost like the difference between a bullet and a bazooka, or a handgun and a bazooka.
Yeah, but the what I'm saying is the reset resets the timeline.
Yeah.
But the pruning is what sends the variant to the void?
Yes.
Because there's a difference between the reset is the grenade charge.
Yes.
That little grenade that they put on the ground, that's the reset. Right. The prune is the stick that they hit you with. So they prune you first or bring you to... Well, what it's seemingly before pruning was ever introduced, it looks like they bring variants to the TVA, erase their mind, and make them become workers.
Yes.
So you get put into time slavery for all of eternity.
Right. Yep.
Yeah, this is crazy,
But yeah,
crazy
I
stuff.
think that the stick is more for individuals, and then the charge is for bigger things. We also have a device called the time twisters, which work in close connection with the necklace that we saw. That what did they call it? I had it here, chronokinetic collar. And so with the time twisters, we see that so long as somebody has one of those necklaces on, you're able to return them to their original position by a few seconds. We saw Loki do this to Hunter B-15 when he was trying to escape, and seemingly Kang has one of those, or sorry, He Who Remains has one of those. But yeah, that's basically the TVA and Loki themselves in a nutshell, which branches us into our first, I guess, plot point, which is this idea of finding a variant. So Loki is enlisted by Mobius to help find a variant version of himself that's been going around killing TVA hunters and threatening the sacred timeline. And we see this variant, even though they're clouded in mystery, at a Renaissance fair where they're able to set up a trap to kill a bunch of these TVA Minutemen and actually take one hostage. See Hunter C-20, and her disappearance causes the TVA to try to look into where this variant is, and Loki, of all people, is able to find out that she or they must be hiding in apocalypse events, because you, even if a next event occurs in an apocalyptic event, the TVA can't find it. What do you think about Loki finding this out? What do you think about him like figuring all this out?
Well, I mean, he is a very Loki was never stupid. If that's one thing before the MCU ever showed me, it's the one thing I knew was Loki conniving and cunning. That comes with, geniusness. You can't be clueless and stupid and not think 10 steps ahead and be conniving and cunning.
Yeah.
The God of Mischief has to literally be 20 steps ahead of everybody.
I also think it speaks to the thing that we hear later on, which is that Loki's survive. Like, he understands as a Loki how a Loki could survive in a situation like this. Not to be crass, but it's almost like Lokis are kind of cockroaches. They find a way even in dire circumstances to survive. So he's looking at this as, how could a version of me survive on the timeline?
That as a bad thing.
Well, you kill cockroaches. You obviously feel
look, if you
a superiority over them.
Stomp on that's what Thanos did. Thanos literally put his big boot down and stomped on a cockroach walking across the floor. But if you see a room full of cockroaches and throw a grenade in that room, chances are you only got about like 5 of them.
Could you fight a cockroach that was your size?
No, I couldn't. They have 4 arms. That's like fighting Goro. They also have an exoskeleton. That's one thing a lot of people don't seem to understand about cockroaches. They have exoskeletons.
I never would have thought you would have spoke on this podcast about what the one thing is that people don't understand about cockroaches.
And it's that they literally have 2 skeletons.
Speaking of 2, we find out that this other variant is this Loki variant is actually a woman, and her name is Sylvie. And she's been, like Loki said, hiding out in various apocalypses that brings them to a Roxxon cart apocalypse. Sylvie's played by Sophia Di Martino. She's a variant of Loki, who's attacking the sacred timeline and has enchantment powers. She doesn't consider herself to be a Loki, and she uses the name Sylvie as an alias. While Sylvie was inspired by Sylvie Lushton, aka the Enchantress, and Lady Loki from comics, as we all kind of figured out when we first saw her, she's a different person with an entirely different backstory from those characters. And the actress herself said Hiddleston kind of looked after her and made sure she got advice on how to play the character, because she has to do her own version of Loki. In a way, there has to be things that mirror. She can't be a completely different variant. So they played a lot around with the things that they think kind of make up Loki, which is like his charm, which I think she's charming.
100%.
Her ability to turn on a dime, and the idea that she can reel people in with these stories, seemingly
what's brilliant about it is that they managed to capture a Loki, by way of being its own Loki. This isn't a Loki that's mistrusting because, oh my god, my entire 150 years of living, I didn't know I was a frost giant. This is a Loki that just can't trust because it didn't get the chance to trust.
Yeah.
The Loki we saw in the Sacred Timeline trusted until his trust was broken, and he never trusted again and said, you know what, if I'm going to be this way, I'm just going to be this way. This is a Loki that said, oh, no one's just going to trust me off the rip. Well, I'm just going to be what you think I am. Like this.
Yeah, it was kind of tragic watching this Loki kind of constantly be compared to the worst versions of himself, even though he was trying to break out of that pattern.
No,
but
when
that's
that
very
shit broke my
human.
heart.
That's very human. How often have people struggled with addiction or alcohol abuse, things like that? And
It's the boy who cried wolf, essentially, really.
Yeah, people keep looking at you as the worst version of yourself, even when you're trying to.
But here's what's so
improve.
sad about it is we have to look at this Loki as 2012 Loki. We can't look at this Loki as 2018 Loki. You logically have to see this Loki as he's only suffered 2 major events in his life.
Mm-hmm.
Thor and the Battle of New York. That's it.
Right.
So for you to compare a Loki that didn't get a chance to go through Dark Worlds or Ragnarok or Infinity War, to compare him to other versions that happened that he doesn't even know that happened is really messed up.
But the other side of that, though,
saying, "Oh, there's a George in Reality 3 that literally destroyed the world. You're bad because that George from that reality destroyed the world."
But I guess the other side of that coin is that you could argue that without those life-altering events that take place in the sacred timeline to Loki post Avengers 1, that he would then just revert to regular, I'm going to kill everyone and take over all the planets.
But it all happened only because of the first Thor.
Yeah.
You want to stop Loki in its tracks, stop the first Thor events from happening of Loki convincing Thor to go fight.
No, but I guess assuming I'm going to assume then that it was always meant for Loki to make the Avengers become a team.
Yes,
so we do need that. We need those events to happen. After that,
it was always meant for Loki to find out that he was adopted, because it was Loki that convinced Thor to go fight Jotunheim. Yeah, they straight up told her she was adopted. He had to find out when he convinced Thor to go fight the Frost Giants, and one of the Frost Giants grabbed him by the wrist and he didn't turn into ice.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. I'm reading interviews and stuff. It turns out that one of the big headspaces they wanted Sophia to get into for Sylvie is that they wanted her to be in the same place mentally that Loki was after Thor 1, which is like blind rage. Like, everyone's counting me out. I'm just going to burn this whole thing to the ground, and considering that she has been hunted by the TVA since birth almost, or at least since young childhood, it's that proverb, the child that's not embraced by the village will burn it down to feel its warmth. And so she's not allowed to live on the timeline. So screw the timeline. Like you said,
wow, that really is a lot. They really, really have a theme for a lot of these villains. Like you can argue that Loki, Killmonger, and Sylvie all have had the same feeling of I'll burn the village down to feel its warmth. Yeah.
And it goes to, like, at least with the Lokis, the show goes to great lengths to talk about labeling and how people write each other off. He's just an addict, right? Or he's just a bum, or he's just this, or she's just.
Well, they go out of their way to call him a Loki or a variant. They don't say he's Loki. He's a Loki. They throw the. They don't go out of their way to make it possessive.
Yeah.
It's
and all Lokis are you seemingly alike, and you can lump them all in together.
I mean, for a whole episode, he had to wear a jacket that said variant.
And
that's essentially the Jews having to brand themselves with the Star of David during the 1940s,
right. And that's how the TVA saw it. They went to a great lengths to explain that they are constantly pruning Lokis. I think they said they prune more Lokis than any other variant that exists. So I wonder if it's always in the Loki. I wonder if that's a testament to what they're talking about with him surviving all the time, or if that's because Lokis will always eventually try to figure this out and try to stop it. Either way. But that because of that, once we meet Sylvie, it transforms from the TVA versus the variant to the Lokis versus the TVA, because after a brief fight, Sylvie knocks Loki unconscious, and she sets up some reset charges as a distraction for the TVA. When the timer on the charges runs out, all those little charges get teleported to different parts of the timeline, and she basically bombed the timeline. And I was thinking that we were going to see, huh?
It kind of never went anywhere, though.
Right. I'm assuming now, in retrospect, that it was a distraction for the TVA because if you look at the events linearly, what she's trying to do is she just figured out from Hunter C15, I think, or C20, that all the TVA members are variants.
Yes.
Once she gets that information, she then tricks the TVA to meet her somewhere. I guess this apocalypse. She knew that they were coming.
How would he know of all apocalypses?
Oh, the gum. It was the gum.
Oh yeah, the gum came from
that exact supermarket
year. that year, yes.
That exact supermarket that year. And so using the gum in episode 1 that they find the anachronistic gum, they're able to go to that apocalyptic event. But her whole goal was to trick the TVA distract them with the bombs so that she can go to the TVA. Because that's what she does next. She opens that door. The episode ends with her opening that door, her going through, and then Loki. What we don't realize, because you don't connect those dots right away, is that she went to the TVA. So she gets there. She's followed by Loki, who tries to stop her. And eventually, they're both stopped by Renslayer. Renslayer is going to stop them. And then Loki steals Sylvie's temp pad and transports them to that planet in the year 2077, where the apocalypse was going to take place, when the moon crashes.
Good old Lamentus, where they can lament their feelings.
Yeah. I'm not a fan of that episode. I'm not
a fan of the purpose of that episode. Like I don't find the episode to be bad in its writing or its entertainment. Every episode of Loki was entertaining. But when I look back on the episode that I could probably do without Lamentus, only because of what they were trying to say with the theme of that episode. But Loki singing in Asgardian.
That's beautiful. Some of the sets are beautiful. Some of the talks are beautiful. I just feel like you could have chopped that up and sprinkled it.
It's also the episode Loki confirms he's bisexual. So
it's also the episode that has no Mobius. A bad president across the board.
There's no Mobius in that. It's a very much of a bottle episode.
Yeah, and so I get it. I've heard from people who dig the show more than me that there was a lot there. To me, though, and this is a analogy I used in the group chat. I feel like there's a beautiful fireworks display going on, and then I'm told to look at an ant, and the ant is having an incredible adventure. But behind him, there are literal balls of fire exploding. So there's this quiet moment. What's going on with the TVA bombing? What's going on with the literal timeline being bombed at several locations that seemingly kind of all get wiped away when all
the only thing I can tell you is, how many times have you seen a beautiful fireworks display? Now, does a fireworks display ever change? You know that there's different fireworks, but does the display of fireworks ever change? No, it's the same fireworks display. Have you ever followed an ant on their adventure?
But there's a reason why we don't follow ants on their adventure, and there's a reason why.
Is it because they're so much smaller than us? Is it because it's so minuscule in our day-to-day life that we can't see an ant carry a cherry that's 2 times its size back to an anthill?
I think it's important. Like I said, I do think that it's like a very determined ant. Like I do love that story. I just don't know why they felt they had to tell both stories at the same time.
Coming from the ending of episode 2, with the bombing of the timeline and then Loki following Sylvie, going straight into this self-contained, more calm Lamentus episode. No, you 2 different tones. The inconsistency is all off. If you would have made Lamentus like an episode 4-ish type thing, like somewhere halfway through the series, but by episode 3, you're literally halfway through the series. So at this point, we're halfway through the series, and we get this very self-contained character dive, and I feel like it should be later. You should do the character dive with Sylvie and Loki on your way to meet Kang.
Like I said, I also think it could be sprinkled. Like, keep episode 3 as it is, but instead of a lot of the quiet moments, put Mobius back in there. Him sniffing around, him trying to figure out what's going on with Hunter.
Oh, I see
C20.
Yeah, if they would have went back and forth between, now we have Sylvie and Loki for 2 minutes, and then let's go to Mobius and Ravonna dealing with.
But they put the whole TVA on hold. I'm all for quiet moments with Tom Hiddleston. In my Loki recap, I gushed about him singing in Asgardian, showing that that's how he really feels, even when he's the angriest. This did a lot of great things to pull apart layers of Loki and realize what he really means and what he really feels versus what he says. Because that's
what I found beautiful about. like it was always like a little thought that was in the back of my mind, but this show like fully confirmed no matter what Loki timeline we're getting, he sees Asgardians as his people.
Yeah.
And it makes me I'm getting emotionally chalked up right now because it's like the man as far as 2012, as far as this Loki we know right now, he's adopted. Right. He knows he's adopted. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. He's adopted. And he still says the Asgardians are his people. Even when he's insulting them, even when he's literally insulting them, he's like, my people are stupid. Yeah. He doesn't say the Asgardians are stupid people. Oh, they're a dumb race. No, he says, my people are not really bright. You know, I'm a lot smarter than my people. The fact that he literally calls Asgardians his people is probably one of the biggest inklings of Loki has redeeming character qualities.
Yeah, and the guy doesn't really belong anywhere, right? He doesn't really belong anywhere. So then he creates this thing where he's like, I'm going to take over because no one's going to let me in, you know? So like, I kind of get that aspect of it as well. And we find out through conversation and well, first after various mishaps, we find out that they're stuck there. So Sylvie and Loki have several deep conversations about their upbringing. And how the TVA has been hunting Sylvie for years. And we find out that the TVA is using variants as employees after snatching them from their timeline and wiping their memory. We were originally told by the Time Variance Authority that everyone who worked for the TVA was created to work in the TVA. They lived no past lives. They were created for the sole purpose of policing the timeline. Which is
kind of also kind of weird because why would the TVA legit create solely humanoids? You're telling me there's not one alien, not one Kree, not one Skrull, not
it's almost as if the person who created the TVA is a human.
Who,
you know, like very Earth-centric, very human-centric.
Yeah, that was the one thing that was bugging me out. It's like if you're the TVA and you exist out the timeline, you're trying to tell me that there isn't even a pink-skinned woman whose eyes are a little bit too far apart. Like
we saw them arrest a Skrull in the first episode.
We did.
They're aware of other alien species, but I guess they want to keep it human. I have no idea why.
Poor Casey doesn't even know what a fish is.
Poor Casey doesn't even know what a fish is. While witnessing the planet's destruction, the two Lokis hold hands, which causes a nexus event. This alerts the TVA, who apprehends both Lokis.
Which is actually a really good touch because it's not just something in Loki. It's something that's like usually explained in all time traveling properties that if you and your past self was to physically touch, you would cause like cataclysmic events. Like if you went back in time and gave yourself a handshake, you would literally destroy reality in of itself.
Right.
So the whole fact that Loki and Sylvie touching hands physically caused this event is kind of cool.
Yeah, and you know, obviously it's not the exact same thing because it's not the exact same Loki's touching, but you're right. Like we're told constantly with paradoxes how those are created. And one of the other things that I think is interesting is I feel like it's a commentary about loving yourself. You know, I think it's a commentary about like loving yourself and forbidden loves, like all the time.
That's why I don't love myself.
When they bring
I don't want to cause no cataclysmic events.
Sure. When people bring in, when they bring in the Lokis, you know, Mobius shames Loki for kissing Sylvie in a way I never saw until like when you think about people of other sexual orientations. That's what that reminded me of.
Even same sex.
Yeah, just any kind of sexual orientation other than heterosexual feels like it would be berated with the same kind of inane statements that
you're blowing my reality right now. Like, whoa, Mobius, chill.
Yeah, like they're chaos. They can't love each other. They're chaos. Okay, what? We're gonna ruin everything that y'all built? No, what are you kidding? It's just our love.
Kang was a little bit weirded out by it. He's like, it's like, wow, two Lokis at the same time. This is kind of weird, but you know what? I dig it. Like,
right. Renslayer keeps the Lokis away from each other. And Mobius ends up getting suspicious about things, thinking his big old boss ain't telling the truth. And he ends up uncovering the same big TVA secret that the TVA was informed by the Timekeepers. He goes to free Loki from his time cell, where he was trapped in a violent time loop with Sif. You want to talk a little bit about Jamie Alexander coming back?
Oh, my girl. I love this girl. I was so excited when she joined the MCU. For those that don't know, I get shamed by the group chat for my love of where I found her from, and that's Kyle XY.
Kyle XY. I
Good
still
old.
cannot believe. I
I
can't
used to
believe it.
watch that show every week. Every week, I loved that show, and yeah, so I've known Jamie Alexander's for a very long time, but this specific episode, like this, not episode, this moment right here of the repeated ball kicks, I think that was their way of literally speeding up Loki's character development quicker. It's like, listen, I know you guys sat through 10 years of Loki having to go through all of these little character changes, but we're just going to kick him in the balls a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And then he's
Yeah.
finally going to realize, oh, I'm not meant to be loved because I just want attention and I'm a trickster.
And again, it's this negative reinforcement, right? It's again like know your place.
Totally negative.
You're not allowed.
Totally
you're not
negative.
allowed to get better or be better. You are labeled in this as a malcontent. That's just what you are. That's what your story is going to be. And through even from the first episode, Loki's like, you don't tell my story. But in the same sense, he's constantly being told this ain't about you. So it's a very weird position to take. As you live your life is the most important thing to you. I'm assuming at one point you become a spouse or you get a partner, and then that person's the most important thing to you. And then you have children, and those are the most important things to you. But to understand that for Loki to understand that he's not important in the grand scheme of things was very humbling with the TVA. And then to then be told once he had the first moment of something that felt like he belonged, where he's there with Sylvie and they're enjoying each other's company, he's told that that's perverted. He's told that that's dirty. That's wrong. Where do you go?
Oh my God, you fell in love with yourself. No shit, I did.
Where do you go? Where do you understand when you act the way they tell you you should act, then they write you off as a evil villain. And when you try to make your own path for yourself, they tell you you're not allowed to do that as well. And that's that free speech or free will, conversation that we were having earlier. So while that whole sifting is going on, Sylvie imparts Hunter B-15 with her original memories, proving that she was a variant. This goes to that Tears and Rain moment that we have, very reminiscent of replicants figuring out what's going on.
Yeah, that's so beautiful about Blade Runner is the whole thing was it was the Sylvies fighting the TVA.
Right.
They knew they were replicants and they fought against it because they were. Well, most people, I don't know if have you seen Blade Runner?
No.
Okay, so Blade Runner basically is we created robots to basically be our population, but we programmed them to die in like 100 years. Like they get 10 years. They get like a certain time span.
Mm-hmm.
You're a robot, you're created, but you only have like 10 years to live, and then you literally automatically shut down. These replicants figured out that they had a lifespan, and they fought to change their lifespan. All they wanted to do was find the doctor that created them and up their lifespan a little bit longer. And it became this whole big bad ideas like, oh no, this person can't do this person can't do that. They're a replicant.
And like you're saying, Sylvie's a person who's basically being blamed for existing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like
sad.
Yeah.
And that's still, I still can't believe it. Like basically her variant stream was she was born the wrong gender. And the fact that she was born the wrong gender and the gender that she is as a woman kind of like speaks to the way most people feel. Most pieces of shit feel like, oh, you're a woman? Oh, too bad you weren't born a man, or I would hire you for this position. Like, this is messed up. But But the beautiful thing is it's Kang controlling it all, so.
Like it was he who remains all along. Dun, 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 dun,
no, it was
dun.
Miss Minutes all along.
It really was. So once they get back, Renslayer has Mobius pruned for his insubordination. And like you said, she was conflicted because they seemingly were friends, but to her, the TVA's mission is paramount, because if it doesn't exist, if it's not real, then she has done unspeakable things for absolutely no reason. So she has to dig her heels in.
Which is basically a lot of how they portray a lot of like officers in military, like, you know, like Nazi
soldiers, the dark side, right? The Empire. Like you got to believe that to work there. You got to believe, in their
that the
beliefs or
Jedi's
their
took over and they tried to assassinate the Emperor and the Jedi's
yeah
are evil. Like you literally have to believe that, or otherwise, oh my God, I literally just slaughtered
right
tens of thousands of kids for no.
100%. So that's she's indoctrinated at this point. Even when presented with information that seemingly debunks her entire existence, she is still like she's still trying to hold on to that. When you have a narrative, it's really the thing about like really religious people or people in cults. Like when that is the story you've been told your entire life, and then you're told that that story is not true. It's not. It's almost easier to dig your heels in the story you know than it is to say, you know what, I'm going to throw all my belief system away and try to start this whole thing from scratch. So I don't blame her at all for her stuff, but she was put in a very odd position. Did you ever think that she knew more than she let on?
Ravonna?
Yeah.
No.
No.
No. Because you see it all the time. Not just portrayed in media, but it's in real life all the time. Is I thought I was doing something good. They sold me A, B, and C, and all of a sudden D comes out the woodwork, and I'm actually wrong. Like you see it all the time of people thinking that they're applying for something for the greater good, and it turns out that they're just another cog in the machine.
Right. How heartbreaking is that? And especially when you think your glorious purpose is to rule the machine, to realize you're just a cog, it's disheartening as hell.
What it was also a big thing was it's denial. It's a lot of denial because she knew what happened. Once they interviewed that girl that's like, no, we're all variants. She probably did her own research. Or
I mean, you saw her look at the camera, right? She's like, oh shit. She looked at the camera like, oh, shit.
And you also see what a lot of the times that she tried doing her research, Miss Minutes was giving her stuff like, yeah, the king will think that this was a lot better for you. Like, wait, well, what are you talking about? Like, nah, just go with this. Like, so she was definitely fighting that there's no way. And you can't fight it any longer.
Right.
And that's why
started
she went
coming
to go
down
search
around
for
her.
her own free will.
It almost reminds me of V for Vendetta, like the end of it. You know how like that whole political party was spiraling out of control, but the leader was still screaming and like, no, this is the right thing. Because what else? You've already done some crazy thing. I don't remember his name. I remember Norse Fire was the name of the was the name of the political party.
He was an alien. William
Hurt, not William Hurt.
It's not William Hurt. God, he was an alien, and he's also the guy that gave Harry Potter his wand in the first Sorcerer's Stone movie.
What is it? Oleander? It's John Hurt.
John Hurt. Good old Johnny Hurt.
Johnny Hurt.
Rest in peace to the legend.
But yeah, Ravonna has her homeboy pruned, but then she's like, you know what? I'll bring you up to the TVA. You guys can sit and talk to the TVA. I mean the timekeepers. I don't even care.
Do you think she was surprised that they were animatronic lizards?
I'm very confused as what the hell was supposed to happen there. Were they going to just pass on the thing of like, we've decided you are to be killed, and then the TVA people behind them just prune them? Like, what was going to be the end result of bringing?
It's probably going to do the Ravonna pruned them type thing.
What's worse is I want to say earlier in this episode there was a scene of Ravonna meeting with them, and so they gave her the same smoke and mirrors bullshit that they gave the Lokis. And she works there, so it's like, okay. Cause they get to this room and they see these 3 huge timekeepers. There's smoke and lasers and all this other kind of stuff going on. And they're talking to the timekeepers, but then all of a sudden B-15 with her new memories, she defects from the TVA and helps Loki and Sylvie out. And they're able to take down the TVA agents in the area. And Sylvie decapitates one of the timekeepers before we realize that all of the timekeepers are androids being programmed from afar, evil Morty style, or evil Rick style, I should say. Sylvie and Loki have a tender moment before Ravonna prunes Loki, sending him to what we will refer to now as the Void. And then Sylvie holds Renslayer for questioning, but Renslayer uses the opportunity to stall until security arrives. When Sylvie is surrounded, she uses the TVA baton on herself, sending herself to the Void where our Loki is. I just said a whole lot there, Dan. What do you feel about all of that? What do you feel about Loki? Sylvie deciding, I like that moment where they're like, if she has any good memories, and she's like, I have one, and then she prunes herself.
I couldn't believe that she was gonna prune. I mean, it's weird because if she would have pruned herself before the realization that pruning brings you somewhere,
Yeah.
it probably would have been like a much more, oh my god, what the hell is she doing? This, but I guess if you're gonna go by character thoughts, she didn't know what the hell was gonna happen. She banked on the fact that pruning brings you somewhere.
I like that she just did it in like the weird Japanese seppuku kind of.
Oh yeah,
to the gut.
I no, yeah, because it's one that's in that culture, that's how you die of honor.
Yeah.
Like if you dishonor yourself, the way to die with honor is just right, your own katana right to the gut.
So like her holding it like that and doing it like that, though, is pretty cool. And then we get to the void. We find out that there is a place called the void where all the stuff that gets pruned goes because you can't destroy matter. So once in the void, Loki meets other variants of himself, including Kid Loki, Classic Loki, Boastful Loki, and Loki Gator. They tell him they've been trapped in the void, but because they are Lokis, they survive as they are meant to. Everything in the void is in danger of being consumed by Alliath, a trans-temporal entity and primordial cloud that absorbs and conquers whichever reality it touches. Loki and Sylvie work together to enchant Alliath and get past it with the help of Classic Loki. Once they get rid of him, they find a citadel, and in it, Miss Minutes introduces them to He Who Remains. So before we get to He Who Remains, let's talk about these variant Lokis. Let's talk about the Void. What'd you like about that episode?
I'm so happy that we managed to get a Vote Loki variant. Like literally, like we read the comic, and I think I could. Was there an episode before this that Loki in the Void episode?
Like, we were told that episode 3 or 4 was going to have the Vote Loki in it. So we thought that we were right on time, but it ended up showing up in Loki episode 5. And as many people have pointed out, there are tremendous amounts of misdirects in the trailer for this series that have not come to pass yet. One of the things that people point to a lot is Loki on the throne of Asgard. That's been shown in all the trailers. People assumed that maybe this was going to be the big bad at the end of it, and that could have been the breadcrumb trail that Marvel tried to lead us on before pulling the rug out from under us. But I dug all the variant Lokis. It was cool to see Kid Loki from the comics, Alligator Loki,
Crocodile Loki has my heart. That's it.
It's Loki Gator.
Locodile has my heart.
He's a Loki Gator, sir. We actually have Loki Gator shirts on comicbookclick.com, so go ahead and
I still don't know the difference between a gator and a crocodile.
Something about the teeth. There's like an overbite underbite thing. I'm not 100% sure which one's which, but it's
listen. If you are close enough to be able to differentiate the teeth of an alligator or a crocodile, I think you're too close.
It's not worth it, bro. It's not worth it. So yeah, let's get into the main event of it. We find He Who Remains, and basically get an introduction to the multiverse because we meet He Who Remains, the person running all this, and we get his backstory. So, while living on Earth, the man who will be known as He Who Remains discovered the existence of alternate universes and versions of himself. One of these variants, a scientist from the 31st century, caused them all to meet each other, and they would share knowledge and technology. However, some of his variants saw the alternate universes as places to rule or conquer over, thus starting a multiversal war where all of his variants are fighting for supremacy to be the ruler of all of the multiverse. After one of his variants discovers Alliath, He Who Remains harnessed the power of Alliath. Alliath became almost kind of He Who Remains attack dog, and he sicked Alliath on all of the other timelines, all the other universes.
If you really think of it, it's kind of very Greek mythology-esque with like the 3-headed dogs guarding.
Oh, Cerberus.
Yes, it's like Cerberus guarding the underworld, and Hades is sitting on the other side. Like they literally had to enchant Alliath to be able to get to the citadel at the end of time.
Yeah, he's the
really
guard dog.
The 3-headed dog to get to Hades, which is kind of crazy.
And not only is that the guard dog just for this citadel, but again, this entity was sick on whole timelines. took out entire timelines, and now sits at the end of time in case anyone got beef with He Who Remains. So it's crazy that he was able to harness a attack dog like that. So he isolates his native timeline, dubs it the sacred timeline, and then creates the TVA to govern and protect it from being overrun by his variants. Let's talk a little bit about the man, Jonathan Majors, playing
the man, the myth, the legend.
The thing is, he was already confirmed to be Kang in Quantum Mania, and besides having a lot of ties to time, he also has a lot of ties to Fantastic Four, that character, because the character is originally Nathaniel Richards, a descendant of Reed Richards, who does the whole. Kang is the scientist that eventually decides to conquer everything. That means
Reed is a black man in the MCU. I'm gonna love it.
I do wonder how much they're going to tie this into the eventuality of us getting the Fantastic Four in the MCU, but this is a good start. Bringing him in this way. So we knew he was going to play Kang. So seeing him play,
no, that's what I'm saying. When the doors opened and I'm looking and I'm watching, I'm like, is that Jonathan Majors? Holy shit! It's Kang. It's Kang, guys. It's Kang.
And Kang was somebody that people had been theorizing to be behind us all the way from the beginning, and it turns out that. It kind of isn't Kang. You find out that this is one of the many variants of the man that will eventually be Kang.
But it's perfect. It's what I always say all the time. Like, if you can give me another version of the version, like, don't give me Earth 626 Spider-Man. If you want to give me like a Spider-Man from another universe and then just have the name Spider-Man, do it. So to give me this kind of Kang, but stick with the purple and green getup.
I think I've told you this before, but I'm always been a big fan of people so scared of a villain that they talk about him before he shows up. They do this in Daredevil season 1.
Yep, you have mentioned that before.
Where they speak of Fisk, but you never see Fisk. And He Who Remains, being this timeless, powerful man, still like creating this entire thing to stop seemingly one variant is really exciting me. And I feel like
that they had to make up 3 robotic space lizards just to subvert your expectations,
to stop the worst of himself. Feels like something big is happening. What did you think of He Who Remains and the reveal that he was the head of the TVA?
I mean, it kind of is obvious.
Yeah.
Especially the second you look up Ravonna and you see who her boyfriend is, it was the effect of finding out Agatha was in WandaVision, and you're like, okay, if Agatha's in WandaVision, how far along is Mephisto?
People still laugh at that. People still laugh at the hi, my name is Agatha Harkness, because we all were like, yeah, we know, just get past it.
We know you are, honey.
Get past
You're literally
it. Get past
wearing
it.
the crest.
Right.
She was literally wearing the crest. We know who you are, sweetheart.
And then with my freaking what do you call it? Impatience, I wanted this reveal in episode 5. You understand? I thought with pacing,
that would have been a good way to close out the penultimate and then get the final episode with all the reveals. But they kind of did shoot themselves in the foot by not giving us the penultimate of that.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I don't know. People are theorizing that they had shot more, but because of COVID, they couldn't do it. That people are also theorizing that's why they may be getting a season 2. I don't have any confirmation on any of those things. But what I do know is that the pacing did feel off here. We talk about that right there with the whole He Who Remains reveal. But then if you pair that with the Lamentus of it all, it's like, why are you dribbling? Why are you on the treadmill? We got a story to tell.
Especially since those were literally only 3 episodes apart from each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
And these are 30 to 40 minute episodes. How far could you really go in 2 hours and 20 minutes?
So what's interesting is Kate Herron, the director of this, she was talking about casting Jonathan Majors, and she said that casting him was a very surreal experience. When I joined the project, we always knew that Loki and Sylvie were going to see He Who Remains and that the multiverse will be released. So I already knew that when I got the job that it was going to be a massive undertaking to do that and a big responsibility for Marvel to get it right. And Jonathan Majors is an actor that we were all just blown away by. I think everyone who knows his work is blown away by him. And when I knew
100%.
And when I knew we had Jonathan, he and I were solely focused on He Who Remains and this version of the character, this variant. The Quantumania casting happened at the same time. So basically, Ant-Man director Peyton Reed and I were in that discussion with Kevin Feige and the team at Marvel. We knew he was going to be in Quantumania, and we knew a version of him was going to be in Loki. So imagine trying to cast for both versions of that. He's got to be amazing.
2 different versions of the same character from the same actor.
That's bananas. That's crazy. And from other interviews and stuff that I heard, the jumping on the table was improv.
That looks improv. I'm not even gonna hold you. That looks improv. When he jumped on the table and did the squat, that looked improv. 100%.
One of the other things that I found out was that supposedly he's a classically trained clown. Jonathan Majors is.
Jonathan Majors is trained in vaudeville?
Yes.
Whatever
form of that
it's like Pagliacci or some shit like that. Yeah.
And so he used a lot of that. That's why there was so much physicality in his portrayal of He Who Remains. And I think that physicality represents a limitless energy that I feel a restless man would have at the end of time. Does that make sense? Like he don't get a lot of company and stuff. So he's just like out and about and like speaking to them on these terms. He like, I am so surprised.
Well, yeah, think of it like how many people has he had communication with that wasn't Miss Minutes?
That's it, seemingly.
So yeah, he was definitely ramped up beyond 10 because he's like, oh God, people are here. I get to talk to people.
But he speaks of everything with unimportance of someone who's seen everything, right? Like even when he's threatened with death, he's like, what are you doing? Like, what is this about? I loved his portrayal of this. And I love the playfulness of it because he's going to turn on a dime with Kang. Kang is going to be a completely different opposite character of this. So when we see him,
we're not even going to realize how big it's going to be.
Yeah, we're going to think, it's funky dory. And then he's going to turn on a dime and it's about to be a wrap. So I'm very interested in that. And yeah, very interested in, again, the clown college kind of, portrayal of this.
I can't believe that man was trained in vaudevillian. That's crazy.
What do you think about that? You're saying there, you're directing, he just jumps on the table. They said they moved the cameras to try to follow him and stuff, but yeah.
If I'm a director and I'm doing that scene and he literally jumps on the table, I'm just going to be like, pan in. And that's what they did. They panned in on him. They did an over the shoulder pan in. And that's exactly what I would say. Pan in right now. I want you to get from bottom of knees to shoulder, like get me him squatting on the table with both Loki's shoulders looking over. Like that shot was gorgeous.
I've seen some people criticize the episode as being an episode that basically takes place at a table. I didn't have any problem because again, I thought that Jonathan Majors was enigmatic as hell, and like I just wanted to see what was going on with that character. I loved the whole I'm tired, guys. I'm tired. I've been doing this for way too long. I like that. I like when he yelled at
successor, and I haven't found anybody worthy enough.
I like when he yelled at Sylvie.
You guys made it here.
When he tells Sylvie that she needs to grow up, I love that. Because again,
he says it from such a place of you don't understand that you are small.
Right. Yeah. Like you're complaining about we're on the Titanic and you're complaining that your shoes untied. Like in the grand scheme of things, this is not, you're a blip and this is all.
It's the whole shoulder movement. He's just like, grow.
But how do you feel about that? Because like I said, again, like Kang is looking at, He Who Remains is looking at this entire world and all of its inhabitants. But Sylvie doesn't have to care about any of that, right? Sylvie doesn't have to care about any of that. It'd be like if the mayor of New York was like, you know what, we're to make sure that we all have equal power, we're going to take out one person's house and that'll be Dan's house. And for the betterment of New York, we're going to blow up Dan's house so that everyone has better water and better power. It's New York will be fine with it, but should you be asked to see the bigger picture is what I'm trying to say. Should Sylvie be blamed for not seeing the bigger picture when literally the only picture she has is her life?
I mean, in a sense, it's like yes and no. I don't know how to be able to accurately say it. It's like you are being selfish if you don't let your one house get destroyed to make sure thousands of children are not in the street, but also it's selfish of everybody to ask this one person to be uncomfortable. Like, both parties are selfish in what they're being asked to do. Because, like, there's no way I'm letting myself be pruned so everything in existence can go, because then what happens to me? But also, I feel selfish if I don't do it.
Right. And like we said, this is not a Sylvie who can see the big picture. He's finally with a Loki who can see the big picture, because he was shown the events of his sacred timeline, Loki, and shown his insignificance in this world. But from the very beginning, this was always meant to be Sylvie killing the people who made her life a living hell. So, you know, there's a constant narrative that this isn't Loki's story. And I think when Loki tells her, like, maybe we should believe him, in her head, she's like, this is not about you either, bro. Like, I'm glad that we're cool, and I'm glad that we did this, but I was set on this path before I met you. I'm glad you feel a certain type of way about me, but I got things to do, and it's to kill this man.
She kept saying, I'm gonna finish this. I'm gonna finish this.
Oh, every stop on the journey just leads to more frustration, because it's more of a mystery. It's more of a, you know, the man behind the curtain with Wizard of Oz style. You know, so she's just getting increasingly frustrated, and now seemingly has the person she wants to kill at dagger point. And Loki's like, no, I think we should believe him.
And the worst part is he literally can't see the future no more.
Yeah, we should talk about that. So he's sitting there and he's explaining to them that basically, like, he wants to make a deal with them. He says that even though you guys are aiming to kill me, if I die, you're going to unleash the multiverse, and thus, just like last time, the multiversal war, because versions of him will do the same thing, try to conquer again, and it's all just going to reset again. So he tells them that they should run the TVA moving forward, but Sylvie is suspicious and still hell bent on killing the person who made her life so miserable. You know, she's very targeted, and Loki like holds her and is like I know what
this means to you, but you gotta like.
This is Loki in Avengers 1. You know, like, really rule Midgard and kill Thor? Is that really your goal, bro? Was that really what you thought about when you were little? No, it wasn't. But you're so turned off by everything and everyone that why not burn it all down? Sylvie, go ahead, brother.
No, I was just ad-libbing.
Oh, yeah, but it's like she had a choice there and she makes it. Loki pleads for her to stop. They kiss, but Sylvie sends Loki back to a TVA headquarters.
Yeah.
She ends up killing he who remains, who, you know, like I said, kind of like laughs and says, see you later. A little fun fact, he was also the voice behind the Timekeepers, Jonathan Majors. And when they get disconnected and they kind of laugh. Yeah.
So he was the one that was saying, you are insignificant to the timeline and stuff like. Really?
And when she beheads them and they kind of like laugh and go offline, you can hear somebody in the background go, see you soon.
Wow. He was literally puppeteering them bastards.
Yeah. Wizard of Oz, bro. Wizard of Oz.
Oz. He was literally doing the I am Oz.
Great and powerful. The great and powerful he who remains.
Don't watch Great and Powerful people. Don't watch
No,
Oz.
don't watch that. No.
Don't watch
Seth Rogen wouldn't want you to watch it. That's important.
He definitely wouldn't.
But yeah, he who remains is killed by Sylvie, unleashing a multiverse with alternate timelines that the TVA can't prune. It's just gone out of control. But before his death, like you said,
creating timelines, like you could see branches were creating branches.
Yeah, it was going way too fast and seemingly all meant to happen because before the events of his death, he who remains sensed something in the ether and it cut off his ability to know what happens all throughout time. So something has happened that, in my opinion, doesn't have to do with these Lokis, that set things on a path to allow this to happen, which will then allow for the multiversal war. We might be getting Secret Wars, bro. You understand? We might be getting that comic where all the Thors and all the Spider-Men and all the...
I want Original Sin so I can have an excuse to fucking have this podcast, read Original Sin, because Original Sin and Illuminati are two of my favorite Marvel stories ever.
We'll get to Original Sin because we got Watcher coming up. We'll maybe do it for What If, for the backup for What If.
Oh, please, because anybody that hasn't read Original Sin, oh my God, there is no reason for Marvel to just have... You thought Avengers Disassembled was just events after events of chaos? Original Sin had no reason to just go chaotic after chaotic after chaotic. And it's only like, I think like 6-7 issues.
Yeah.
Like it's relatively a short story.
Very much like this, it blows open the doors of the Marvel universe and changes a lot of things that people knew to be facts.
Original Sin actually changed the continuity of Marvel forever.
Yeah.
Everything that happened in Original Sin changed. Like that's now why Marvel is the way it is. Because Original Sin, Alex would tell you,
seemingly
the
MCU is the way it is because of Loki on both occasions. The bringing of the Avengers, and then this happened. After seeing what she caused, Sylvie kind of just cries, and I think it's just that idea of like revenge not being fulfilling. And I think when she killed him,
that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, when she killed him, she saw the branching timeline, so she realized that what he was saying was true.
No, yeah, that's what's so beautiful, is she was actually able to, with her own eyes, not see a monitor screen showing little animations. She was seeing with her own eyes the timeline that was in a circle around the Citadel, just branch and branch and branch and branch. And now she's seeing this like quasar of events being born.
All by her. How does she get back? How does she? I guess she has a temp pad, so she can probably get back. But it's like, where does she go back to? What happens?
What next? Is there to go back to now?
I don't know.
Where can you go back? Like, not where can you is in the like, where can you go? I mean, like, literally, where is where? Where is that definition of where to go? If now there is no such thing as a one singular timeline.
At the quote unquote TVA headquarters, Loki warns Mobius and B-15 about the variants of He Who Remains, and that got very Thanos vibes of like he's coming. I really like that. He's like, he's terrifying. He lives at the end of the void. He's terrifying, and his variants are coming, but they do not recognize Loki. And he sees that the statue of one of the variants that he was talking about has replaced those of the Timekeepers. Sylvie has unleashed the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse and has kicked Loki to some alternate timeline in which one of the variants has already created the TVA. Who knows where the hell this leaves us off? And this is seemingly going to open the door for season 2, which has already been confirmed via the show. What do you think about season 2? What do you think about this ending where he's not recognized by the rest of the TVA members? Where do you think this is going?
I think it was always meant to go there. Like, not in the I predicted this, but as soon as it gets there, it's like, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, it looks like that's exactly what they would go. But I'm also in the same idea of, 2 women have now just caused the multiverse in the next 15 years of the MCU.
Yeah, I actually thought that WandaVision was going to be the show to do this. And the thing is, I believe it kind of did, though. What I'm trying to say is I believe now it's not going to be one event that breaks the multiverse. They're going to shatter this thing. It's going to be several different acts that will just completely shatter and ruin all this, because we already know Spider-Man is at the end of this year. That won't solve the multiverse stuff because we got Doctor Strange after that. So we'll be dealing with the effects of these branching timelines for quite some bit before it all gets resolved. And who knows what the world's going to look like when that happens. So I think all of that is extremely interesting. But yeah, overall, I dug the series. I think that it asks a lot of big questions. I was more interested in the effects of the overall Marvel Cinematic Universe because I felt like we got 2 kind of self-contained stories. But ultimately, all of this stuff is ultimately going to pay off in the future. So I'm excited about all that.
It wasn't my favorite. Like, I always like to say that there's a difference between something being a favorite and something being a best. Something can be your favorite and not necessarily even to you be the best.
Right.
My favorite Disney Marvel show right now is WandaVision. Like, there is just so much that I could physically go back to and watch without having to be engulfed into the story. I could throw on a very special episode or a Halloween spooktacular and actually genuinely enjoy the content I'm watching. I can go in, don't change that dial or stay tuned and be like, oh, look at the Dick Van Dyke-ness, look at the Brady Bunch and Full House and All in the Family and stuff like that. Like, there was a lot of WandaVision where aesthetically I'm just like, this is appealing to me. But Loki, Loki is the smartest writing. It's the best writing. It's just all around. There is nothing that tops the questions Loki was asking. To whereas I look at it as WandaVision was tackling a lot of mental health,
Right.
and Black Widow, not Black Widow, Falcon
Falcon
and
and
Winter
Winter
Soldier
Soldier.
were covering a lot of political and a lot of like identity politics.
Yeah.
But Loki was like Jonathan Yogi said, asks you, who are you?
Yes. Yes.
And for that
And
matter alone, it's just the best writing I have seen in a long time.
I think that they did, because this is the first villain centric thing that they did. DC had already done Joker at this point. It really tries to sit and define what makes a good person, what makes a bad person. And we talk all the time about how a good person doesn't have to be born good or stay good. They have to actively choose to try to be good. So it makes you really question what Loki's motivations are and what he is at the end of the day, whether he's a hero or a villain. They make it seem like the timeline is created so that you can't change your stripes, but Loki survive. Loki's, carry on. We had that story of the Loki who hid, and was able to hide from Thanos, a kind of an Easter egg to a popular fan theory that Loki didn't die in Infinity War and instead transformed himself into kind of like space debris to trick the Mad Titan. And so they actually play with that idea with this classic Loki. And we find out ultimately that Loki and humans all need a purpose. They all need a purpose. Just surviving is not how you live your life, because it's just a hamster wheel forever. That's all you'll be thinking about is just surviving. You have to want to thrive. You have to want to have something to fight for. And it's the first time I felt like Loki had those things. All of a sudden, it's not about survival and just getting past to the next day and getting free. It's about living and enjoying that life you live with the people that you care about. And he was getting that life with Mobius and with Sylvie, and gets that stuff ripped out from under him. It's hard not to see him react after he gets kicked from Sylvie, that big, silent, sad moment.
Oh my God, that was probably one of the greatest visual actings Tom Hiddleston has ever pulled out of his ass.
It's hard to see that and not think of all the things that Sif said about him not deserving love, or the things that Mobius said, or the things he's been told since birth about him not being welcome or belonging or any of those things.
But the beautiful part about it is he shaked it off, took it in stride, and instead of being selfish and a coward and being his Loki way, he went to warn Mobius, like, listen, we gotta act fast. This person is scary and dangerous. Like, he could have literally have done anything he wanted. He's like, you know what? The world's over. World's over. I'm going to go rule Asgard. Let me go steal a tempad and rule Asgard.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He went straight to Mobius and was like, listen, we have to stop this. Like, this is big. That is like how you say what makes or breaks a hero is trauma.
Yeah.
He took his trauma in stride and continued to try and do the right thing to save humanity.
People he don't know, like faceless.
That is
people he don't know.
Much more of a greater character development for Loki than what Ragnarok did for him.
What Sacred Timeline Loki, like you said, Sacred Timeline.
Yeah, whatever Sacred Timeline Loki went through is nothing compared to the development timeline 2 Loki went through.
We also still got to remember that Sacred Timeline Loki did steal the Tesseract, and he didn't steal it to keep it from Thanos.
No, he stole it because he wanted it.
Right.
Yeah, he stole it because he wanted it.
Maybe he still had another villainous turn to make, you understand? Like, we often look at Sacred Timeline Loki as the hero.
And when Timeline 2 Loki realized that the Tesseract was literally a child's toy,
a trinket,
he's like, you know what? Forget this. I don't want this. Like,
yeah, this is
a much more heroic Loki, and I am so here for this heroic Loki. I don't care. Give me it. Give me a Loki that is so broken that he decides to do what's right instead of what's wrong.
Yeah. And it's all about that personal choice. It's all about that free will. And I want to thank you guys for having the choice of listening to the Main Justice podcast, reviewing Loki of all things. We love covering MCU content, DC content, independent comic book content, but we missed the MCU so much. We've been able to cover Black Widow last week, Loki this week. Next week,
I literally cried. I won't lie. I cried in theaters when the Marvel Studios logo played.
Oh, and we had that awesome Marvel Studios montage, voiceover
We didn't
montage
even bring that
Loki.
up. Oh my God, that is the greatest opening in anything that has ever existed. Not just Marvel. I'm talking about show, movie, music, anything. That is the greatest opening that ever existed.
We thought we had a vast amount of content considering we had created an entire cinematic universe, but now we're going to bust that open. All of what we've seen so far for the last 10 years is going to be dwarfed by what's going to happen in the next 10. And that's incredibly exciting. But the fun thing is, while you go on that journey, we'll be going on that journey simultaneously. So join
we'll be
us.
with you guys. We will. Well, he's older than me, but I will literally be 35 years old covering Miss Marvel 2 in theaters, and it don't matter. We gonna be here,
slate.
people.
And we got some good DC stuff coming up with the Batman, with Shazam, Fury of the Gods, with Titan Season 3, with Stargirl. So the content's going to be hot and heavy.
Oh, God. We have Doom Patrol. We have Umbrella Academy. We have The Boys.
It's all coming back.
Lock and Key Season 2 is going to come. Like, I know a lot of people hasn't seen Lock and Key.
Something's Killing the Children we're going to be covering soon to prepare for its Netflix release. We got so much stuff. Do not miss what we got going on here. Tell a friend what's going on. Latest and greatest. So first of all, thank you for listening to this episode. Every single episode of the Major Issues podcast is available at comicbookclick.com, which is also the one stop for all of our stuff, our merchandise that I create. That's available at tpublic.com. You can find that at comicbookclick.com. If you just hit that shop CBC link, you can hit the support CBC button to become a patron of ours and help independent content creators, us independent content creators, create content and keep the lights on by donating less than 10 cents a day. $3 a month is all it takes to become a patron of Comic Book Click and the Major Issues podcast and help us keep our lights on here as we continue our journey to our glorious purpose. You can also write reviews on iTunes. It's the quickest way for us to grow as podcasters and find out what you like and what you don't. And also it helps increase our audience when they see that we're a 5-star podcast talking about comics. People are looking to join these conversations, and don't point them the wrong way. Don't point them to other variants of Comic Book Click. We're the prime. Send them to us and we'll take care of them. But when you get here, once you've listened to some episodes, once you've bought some merchandise, once you felt as a member of the clique, you know what the next step is. Contact us. We want to know how you feel about Loki, Black Widow, WandaVision, any one of these topics. You are welcome to be a guest on if you are able to get your opinions heard by going to facebook.com/comicbookclick, Instagram at comicbookclick, or if you use the hashtag comicbookclick to talk about the newest, hottest, latest, and greatest things to come to comic books and comic book media. We also are on Twitter at Major Issue CBC, posting dank memes and podcast schedules all willy-nilly. So yeah, join us across the social media, sacred social media timeline. Write to us, become our friends, like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend to tell a friend. Let's grow this as big as we can.
You're already all of our friends. Off. We just don't know you yet.
That's it.
You're our friends.
And I've been to the future, and I've seen this thing become the latest and greatest things to come to comic book media. I've seen the face.
Were there no Nexus events in that future?
The face of the statue changed, Dan. That's what I'm going to say. You understand? The statue is like Planet of the Apes all over again. The statue has changed. The statue has changed. I can't tell you what happens that makes us become that. But I'm just telling you,
Abraham Lincoln is a monkey now.
That's it. We are the Babe Ruth rookie card of podcasts. Get in on us now, because we will be worth millions and trillions in the future. Get in. I'm giving you the stock tip. Get in on Comic Book Click early, because we are going to the moon. But I think that's about it. Next week, we'll be covering Batman 66, the film. That'll be quite fun. And then we are doing a basically 2-part Suicide Squad 2016 and Suicide Squad.
Oh, yeah. So next week is the Adam West Batman.
Then 2017, Suicide Squad. And
then the beautiful fans get me for the next 3 weeks.
Yes, 2021 will be when we do the Suicide Squad. So yeah, we got some big stuff coming. I know all you guys are going to watch this content, so go ahead and watch it. Write to us. We love each and every one of you. We're watching the numbers grow. We're watching the merchandise being bought. We are incredibly thankful for all of your support and all of the interactions we're able to have over 180 episodes we've been able to produce here. But onward and to the next episode next week. My name is George Serrano, aka The Don.
I am Dan, the comic book TV man.
The variant. And this has
Hey,
been
I resent that.
and this has been our Loki season 1 recap and review. And remember, whether you're the best or worst version of yourself, whether you have an alligator variant, a frog variant, or you are the USU in all the finite curve of the multiverse,
I
remember,
like that one.
we are the click. Remember, for all time, always. And remember
Always.
that you, yes, you are worthy.